She was a broke waitress surviving on $47 in tips. He was the most feared crime lord in Chicago, a ghost no one could touch. When she accidentally spilled wine on his $1,000 suit and called him a coward in his own language, she had no idea she had just changed both their lives forever. What started as one reckless moment of defiance turned into a dangerous obsession. A love that would ignite a gang war, burn her home to the ground, and force a ruthless king to fake his own death. All to protect the one woman who dared to see the man behind the monster. But here's the question no one expected. Was their love real from the beginning, or was every single moment a carefully crafted lie? Stay with me until the end, because the truth will shock you. This story is a reminder that real courage is not about having no fear. It is about standing your ground even when your hands are shaking. Sometimes the people who seem the most powerful are the ones who are the most broken inside. And sometimes, love does not come gently. It comes like a storm that tears everything apart, so it can rebuild something better. I knew the night was doomed when the man in the corner booth began speaking Arabic. It was not the language itself. I had learned it in my grandmother's kitchen, her voice a soft melody from her homeland. It was his tone. Each word was sharp, a command fired through the dim restaurant. I was 3 hours into my shift at Marcello's, a high-end Chicago eatery where wine costs more than my apartment, and patrons wore fortunes on their wrists. A dull ache radiated through my feet. My apron held just $47 in tips. It was never enough. An hour earlier, he had arrived with 4 other men, their expensive suits radiating both wealth and menace. They chose the private booth in the back, shielded by velvet curtains, reserved for those who craved invisibility. My manager, Tony, approached me, his eyes filled with anxiety. "Table 12, he said. "Be efficient. Be polite. Do not linger." I had served men with influence before, politicians, actors, even a minor mobster who believed generous tips ensured discretion. But this man was different. He presided over the table like a monarch. His dark hair was perfectly styled, his jawline sharp enough to cut. Across the room, I felt his presence, a heavy weight that seemed to steal oxygen from the air. His eyes were the color of a starless night, cold and observant, missing absolutely nothing. The appetizers were served without a problem. My grandmother's lessons floated through my mind as I overheard pieces of their conversation. They spoke of business, of territory. A man named Victor had made a mistake. Then his phone buzzed. The atmosphere in the booth instantly chilled. He answered in Arabic, his voice initially low, then swelling with a tightly controlled rage. "No," he snapped, his accent native, not learned. "I told you the shipment goes to the South Dock, not the North." The other men at his table became statues, like small animals sensing a predator's fury. "Are you an idiot? Do you wish to be blessed? I will kill you myself." The tray in my hands began to tremble as I neared their table to clear the dishes. My instincts told me to leave, to return later. But Tony was watching me from the bar, making frantic motions to hurry. The man's voice climbed higher, becoming a weapon. "I have no need for your excuses. I need you to execute my commands." He struck the table with his fist, and the wine glasses jumped. His men flinched but remained silent. Then he uttered a phrase that turned my blood to ice. "If you fail me again, Fahim, I will return you to your family in pieces. Is that understood?" The phone hit the table with a clatter. He raked a hand through his hair, a muscle in his clenched jaw pulsing. It was then I made my error. I had silently removed 3 plates. But as I reached for his full wine glass, my hand shook. The glass overturned, spilling red Chianti across the white linen like a fresh wound. The world seemed to stop. His head whipped around, those midnight eyes fixed on me with the force of a physical impact. The anger he had aimed at the phone now found a new target in me. I felt the air leave my lungs. "You are an idiot," he snarled in Arabic. The insult hung between us, sharp and cruel. I heard my grandmother's voice in my memory. "Never allow a man to see your weakness, my love, especially a powerful one." In that moment, Something defiant and weary inside of me broke. I stood up straight, met his stare, and replied in flawless Arabic. "I am not your idiot," I said, my voice even though my heart was a drum. "And you are no king to address me in that manner." The table fell into a profound silence. His eyes widened just a little, the first sign of a crack in his icy control. One of his companions audibly gasped, but I was not done. The words came out in a torrent I could not contain, a mix of my grandmother's teachings and my own deep exhaustion. "You raise your voice at weaker men on the phone," I continued with a slight tilt of my head. "That does not make you strong. That makes you a coward." The word coward, Jaban, seemed to hang in the air of the silent restaurant. For 3 long seconds, no one moved or breathed. Then, he rose. He was taller than I had thought, easily over 6 feet, and he moved with the fluid grace of a stalking panther. He walked slowly around the table, a deliberate path that ended directly in front of me. He was so close I could smell his cologne, a mix of cedar and smoke, and something wilder. I had to crane my neck to hold his gaze. "What is your name?" he asked, his voice a quiet thing, like velvet wrapped around a blade. Every fiber of my being screamed to flee, but I was pinned by his stare. "Lila," I managed to whisper, hating the lack of air in my voice. "Lila," he repeated, as if testing the name. Then, still in Arabic, and so quietly only I could hear, he said, "You speak my language, call me a coward before my men, yet you tremble when I stand near you. Which one is the real you, Lila? The courageous one or the terrified one?" "Both," I admitted. "Always both." A flicker of something crossed his eyes, perhaps surprise, or maybe recognition. His gaze fell to my lips for a heartbeat, then returned to my eyes. "Interesting," he murmured. Then louder, in English with just a trace of an accent, he said, "Fetch me another glass. And this time, do not spill it." He went back to his seat, and I was left standing there, my heart pounding against my ribs. I should have walked directly to Tony and quit. I should have taken my purse and fled from that man, but instead I brought him a new glass of wine, my hands perfectly stable this time. As I placed it on the table, he captured my wrist. His grip was not painful, just firm enough to hold me. His skin was warm, his touch absolute. "Your last name?" he asked. "Why?" I asked back. His thumb traced the pulse point on my wrist, feeling the frantic beat that gave me away. "Because, Lila, anyone brave enough to call me a coward to my face is either incredibly foolish or incredibly dangerous." A hint of a smile touched his lips, but did not reach his eyes. "And I do not think you are foolish." He let me go, and I moved away, my skin burning where he had touched me. As I retreated on unsteady legs, I heard one of his men whisper urgently in Italian. "Boss, you cannot allow her—" "Quiet," he ordered, his gaze following me until I vanished behind the kitchen doors. At that moment, I was unaware that a single act of defiance had just permanently altered my life. The man I had insulted was not merely rich or powerful. He was Dante Marchetti, the untouchable ruler of Chicago's underworld, a man whose influence stretched from the docks to City Hall, who could make a person vanish with a single call. And I had just named him a coward in front of his most trusted men. That night, leaving work at midnight, I discovered a black envelope beneath my car's windshield wiper. Inside, a note written in elegant Arabic script said, "The brave sleep in graves." Below it was a phone number. No signature was necessary. My hands shook as I started my car, the envelope a hot coal in my pocket. I should have discarded it. I should have gone to the police. Instead, I drove home, holding it as if it were a lifeline. I understood my normal life was over, and a far more perilous one had just begun. I found no sleep that night. Every time my eyes closed, I saw him. Dante Marchetti, standing so near I could feel the heat from his body, his dark eyes looking into mine as if he could see every secret I held. The brave sleep in graves. The note sat on my nightstand, a silent taunt in the dark of my tiny apartment. The first thing I did at home was search his name online. My laptop's blue light illuminated my face as story after story appeared. Dante Marchetti, Chicago's most feared man. Federal probe falters. Marchetti untouchable. 3 rival families vanish after disputing Marchetti's claim. The photographs showed him at charity events, smiling with politicians, dedicating new hospital wings. In every picture, he had the same cold look, as if he was barely enduring the charade of being civilized. One article included a quote from an anonymous FBI agent. Marchetti manages Chicago like a business. Clean records, lawful enterprises, and anyone who knows differently is either paid by him or buried by him. He is the 3rd generation of a crime family, but he has made it more powerful than his father or grandfather ever did. He is a phantom. We know his deeds, but we can prove nothing. I slammed the laptop closed, my heart pounding. What have I done? At 3 a.m., I abandoned any hope of sleep and made tea. My grandmother's old copper kettle whistled in the silence. She had passed away 2 years prior, leaving me alone. I was utterly alone in a city that had become immense and menacing. I understood then that power is the only real protection. But what can you do when you have none? My mother's voice echoed in my mind. She would have said my defiance was reckless, not courageous. Courage without wisdom, she always said, is just another name for foolishness. The next morning, my boss Tony called me. He was clearly frightened. "Ela, about what happened," he began, his voice strained. "You should take a few days off." He insisted on paying me, calling it a bonus, then hung up before I could object. A cold dread settled deep in my stomach. He was afraid of Dante Marchetti. I had insulted the man in his own restaurant, and now everyone was afraid. My recklessness was a sickness spreading to others. I spent the day cleaning my apartment, a frantic effort to keep my hands busy. I had to stop my mind from spiraling into terror. Marchetti's note remained on my nightstand. It was a silent promise of violence I could not bring myself to throw away. I refused to call the number on it. How could I apologize for calling him a coward and then plead for my life? At 6 o'clock that evening, a knock came at my door. I froze, holding a soapy plate. A second knock followed, harder this time. I quietly set the plate down and walked to the door, peering through the peephole. A giant of a man in a black suit stood there. He was at least 6 feet 4 inches tall, with shoulders too wide for the hallway. His face showed no emotion, but his eyes scanned everything. "Miss Hassan," his voice passed through the door. "Mr. Marchetti requests your company." Ice flowed through my veins. "I do not know what you are talking about," I replied, hating the tremor in my voice. "Miss Hassan, please do not be difficult," he said. His tone was professional, almost weary. "Mr. Marchetti just wants to talk. You are not in any danger." "Then why did he send a thug to my apartment?" There was a short pause. Then I heard a quiet chuckle. "I am not the thug, Miss Hassan. I am the transportation. The thugs are waiting in the car in case you choose to be uncooperative." My God. "And if I refuse," he continued, "my instructions are to wait in this hallway until you change your mind. I can wait all night." I rested my forehead on the cool wood of the door, my thoughts racing. I had no options. Calling the police was pointless. They would laugh at me. A polite man in my hall? A mob boss who just wanted a conversation? The system would not protect me. "Miss Hassan," the man said, "Mr. Marchetti sent a message for you. He told me to say it in Arabic. Al-Jaban Ladu Hadati. A coward does not invite you into his presence." That arrogant man. He had turned my own insult into a challenge, a test of my nerve. I looked down at my old jeans and faded t-shirt. This was not how you dress to meet a crime boss. "I need to change," I said through the door. Of course, I will wait. My heart was pounding as I stepped back. This was madness. I should try to run, to use my fire escape. But where could I go? Dante Marchetti could find me anywhere in the world, and running would only prove I was weak, that I had failed whatever test this was. His note had said the brave find their homes in graves, but he had also said he did not think I was stupid. Maybe being brave and smart could coexist, or maybe I was just inventing reasons to walk straight into the lion's den. I put on black slacks and a cream blouse, my most professional clothes. I took my phone and my keys. I considered texting someone, anyone, to say where I was going. But I had no one. My family in Chicago was gone. My friends from college were gone. I had been so busy surviving that I had let everyone drift away. If I vanished, how long would it take for anyone to even notice? I opened the door. The man gave me a warm, genuine smile. Miss Hassan, I am Marco, shall we? He offered me his arm, as if this were a date. I ignored his arm. I stepped out and locked my door, my fingers barely shaking. After you, I said. His smile got wider. Of course. A black sport utility vehicle was waiting by the curb. It looked like a government vehicle, with windows so dark they were like black mirrors. A second man in a suit held the rear door open. Marco motioned for me to get in. The drive will take about 30 minutes. Where are we going? I asked. To Mr. Marchetti's estate, on the North Shore. Of course, a mob boss owned an estate. I climbed inside, the leather seat incredibly soft. Marco sat beside me as two other men occupied the front. The vehicle pulled away before I could have second thoughts. My city, the only home I had ever known, suddenly felt like a foreign country. We drove north along the lake, its dark water stretching out like a black hole. Miss Hassan, Marco said casually, Mr. Marchetti asked me to tell you that this is only a conversation. You will be returned home safely. A conversation that requires 3 men and an armored car, I pointed out. His lips twitched. Mr. Marchetti is a cautious man. He has many enemies. And he thinks I am one of them. On the contrary, Marco's face turned serious. He thinks you are interesting. That is far more dangerous. A chill went down my spine. What does that mean? It means, Miss Hassan, that in the 10 years I have worked for Mr. Marchetti, he has never shown this kind of interest in anyone. He looked me directly in the eyes. I do not know if that should make you feel fortunate or terrified. Both, I whispered. Always both. Marco's eyebrows went up. You told him the same thing last night, did you not? I nodded silently. Interesting, he murmured, using his boss's word. He turned and looked out the window, ending our talk. We drove in silence through neighborhoods where the houses grew bigger and the lawns became vast. We finally turned down a private road shaded by old oak trees. The estate appeared piece by piece. First, a high stone wall. Then, massive iron gates that swung open as we approached. A long driveway curved through perfect gardens. The house at the end was not a house. It was a palace. 3 stories of stone and glass glowed against the night sky. It was beautiful and terrifying. We stopped at the front entrance. Wide stone steps led to enormous double doors. Marco opened my door. This way, please. My legs felt weak as I stepped out. The scale of the place was overwhelming. How much money and power did it take to build this? The doors opened before we reached them. A gray-haired man in a butler's uniform was holding them. Miss Hassan, he said with a small bow. Mr. Marchetti is waiting for you in his study. Please follow me. The inside was even more impressive than the outside. The floors were marble. The chandeliers were crystal. The art on the walls could have been in a museum. Everything communicated generations of wealth and unbreakable power. We went up a wide staircase to the second floor. We walked down a long hall lined with portraits of grim-faced men who all had Dante's sharp features. We stopped at a heavy wooden door. The butler knocked softly. Enter. That voice sent a shock through my body. The butler opened the door and motioned me inside. I stepped over the threshold, and the door clicked shut behind me. It was a sound of finality. The study was beautiful in a way that felt threatening. Bookshelves filled the walls to the ceiling. A fire crackled in a marble fireplace. The windows looked out onto the dark grounds and the endless black of Lake Michigan. Dante Marchetti was standing by those windows. He held a glass of dark liquid, his back facing me. He had changed into dark slacks and a white dress shirt, its sleeves rolled up to his powerful forearms. His hair was messy, as if he had been running his hands through it. This version of him seemed more dangerous than the man in the suit. "Sit," he said, still not turning around. I remained standing. "Why am I here?" He turned then. The firelight flickered across his face, making him look like something not of this world. His dark eyes met mine, and I felt the same powerful current from the night before. I felt as though he could see every secret I had. "You did not call," he said simply. "You sent a death threat," I countered. "Most people do not respond to those with a phone call." A slight curve appeared on his lips. "It was not a death threat. It was a truth. The brave sleep in graves." I crossed my arms over my chest. "That sounds very threatening." "Does it?" He walked toward me with the grace of a predator, each step slow and deliberate. "I meant it as a compliment. You were brave, foolishly so." He wanted me to see what happens when you are brave in his world. He stopped several feet from me, close enough for me to notice the dark circles under his eyes and the tight line of his jaw. I realized he looked exhausted, more human than the cold predator from the restaurant. "So this was it. You had your men bring me to your mansion to teach me a lesson?" "My men did not bring you anywhere. You chose to come." He was right, and I hated it. "Dante, why am I here?" I used his name on purpose, and saw a subtle shift in his eyes that could have been surprise. He pointed to a leather chair by the fire. "Please, sit with me." The politeness of that word was enough to make me obey, and I sank into the cushions. He sat across from me, so close our knees nearly brushed. For a long time, he just stared. "Your Arabic is flawless," he said at last. "Where did you learn it?" "From my grandmother. She was Lebanese. She took me in when my parents passed away." "How old were you then?" "6. He gave a slow nod. "I was 8 when I lost my mother. My father raised me right here in this house. He taught me how we do business." His eyes shifted toward the fireplace. "I sometimes believe the most dangerous people on earth are young orphans. We have nothing else to lose." The sudden vulnerability in his tone stole the air from my lungs. This was not the hardened crime lord. This was a different man, someone real under all that armor. "I am sorry," I said quietly. "About your mother." He nodded. "And I am sorry about your grandmother. When did you lose her?" 2 years ago. Is there any other family?" I shook my head. "Not here in Chicago. I have distant cousins in Lebanon, but we have never met." "So you are alone in this city?" It was a statement, not a question, but I still answered, "Yes." His expression changed. A crack appeared in his cold exterior, showing a hint of tenderness. "I understand that feeling, to be in a room full of people and feel completely isolated." He leaned closer, his elbows on his knees, his face painted in shadow by the firelight. "Ela, do you know the reason I brought you to my home tonight?" Hearing my name from him sent a tremor I did not want through my body. "To make me pay for insulting you?" "Number." He reached out with purpose, allowing me a moment to move, and gently took a strand of hair that had fallen from my bun. He rolled it between his fingers with a shockingly soft touch. "I brought you here because in the 10 years I have controlled this city, nobody has ever looked me in the eyes and called me a coward. Perhaps they should have." He smiled then, a genuine smile that erased the harsh lines from his face, making him seem younger. "Perhaps they should have," he repeated. "Ela, do you have any idea what my life consists of? The people around me always want something. Their loyalty is a transaction, paid for with money or with fear. They show respect because they have no other option. My enemies act like my friends. My friends could become enemies for the right price. He let my hair go, and his hand came to rest on his chair, so near I could feel the warmth from his skin. Then there is you, a waitress I do not know, trembling but defiant, telling me the truth in a language you hoped I would understand. Not to get something from me, not to play some game, but because I was wrong and you had the courage to tell me. His gaze locked with mine, and the intensity sent my heart into a gallop. Do you understand how unusual that is? How powerful? I could have been killed, I whispered. Yes. His hand moved, covering mine on the armrest, its weight warm and solid. That is what made it an act of courage. And that is what makes you dangerous, Ila Hassan. Because I have no idea how to handle a person like you. His thumb drew slow circles on my skin. The small gesture seemed to mark me as his. I should send you away, he murmured, his voice growing deeper. Send you back home and pretend tonight never occurred. That would be the smart move, the safe move. But I cannot get the image of you out of my head, looking at me as if I were a man, not a monster, as if you could see what was underneath all of this. He stood suddenly, pulling me up with him. We were standing close, so close I had to tilt my head to look into his eyes. His other hand rose to cup my face, his touch gentle. Tell me to let you go, he commanded. Tell me you want no part of me or my life. Marco will drive you home, and I will be gone from your life forever. My heart pounded in my chest. This was my exit, my chance to escape the darkness he lived in and go back to my simple, safe world. But the words that left my mouth were not the ones I expected. What if I do not want to leave? His eyes grew dark, his pupils wide. Then you are even more foolish than I believed. Or braver, I shot back, using his own word against him. Brave people end up in graves, Isla. Then I suppose I am not ready for bed yet. For a long moment, we were perfectly still. He then leaned in slowly, giving me every opportunity to back away. His lips paused just over mine, close enough to feel his breath. Last chance, he whispered. Leave now, before we create something we cannot undo. But I was never good at choosing the easy path. My grandmother used to say I had my father's stubbornness and my mother's reckless spirit. I closed the final inch between us. The kiss began softly, an exploration. His lips were softer than I imagined, moving on mine with a restraint that felt like a carefully controlled tempest. His hand moved from my jaw to my hair, tilting my head to deepen the kiss. Then the restraint finally snapped. He yanked me against his body, his other arm securing my waist, and the kiss became a fierce, devouring force. I gasped, and he used the chance to slide his tongue against mine, a rhythm that threatened to buckle my knees. It was more than a kiss. It was a brand, a vow, and a threat all at once. My hands pressed against his chest, and I could feel his heart hammering. He was pure muscle and barely contained power. I should have been terrified. Instead, I felt more alive than I had in years. He ended the kiss but held me close, our foreheads touching as we both fought for breath. Ela, he said, my name a rough sound of desire. You have to know what you are doing. My life is not safe. It is not gentle. People close to me get hurt. The people I care for become targets. Then maybe you should let me go, I challenged, though I did not move. I should. His arms held me tighter, but I will not. God help us both. I will not. A phone vibrated in his pocket, breaking the spell. He cursed under his breath in Italian, then in Arabic, before letting me go to look at the screen. His face turned to stone in a second, the vulnerability gone, replaced by an impenetrable wall. What is wrong? I asked. He met my eyes, and I saw something there that chilled my soul. It was not anger. It was fear. Your apartment building, he said, his voice low. It is on fire. The trip into the city was a blur of surreal horror. I sat stiffly in the back of the SUV with Dante beside me. His hand was on mine, in a grip meant to be comforting, but that felt more like a restraint, as if he feared I would bolt. He had said almost nothing since the phone call, only making a series of terse calls in Italian and Arabic, his voice brittle with authority. Marco drove with a practiced speed, expertly navigating the sparse late-night traffic. It might be a coincidence, I heard myself say, my voice feeling like it belonged to someone else. Dante's jaw tightened. It is not. You cannot know that for sure. He turned to face me, and the unbridled fury in his eyes made me flinch. Someone discovered you were at my home tonight. Someone decided that hurting you was the best way to send me a message. Important. The word was a strangled sound in my throat. I only met you yesterday. And yet, here we are. His thumb moved across my palm in a mindless pattern. I thought he needed the contact to keep himself grounded. In his vehicle, after being in his house, after kissing him in his study. The memory of that kiss felt like it was from another life. A time before, when my greatest danger was offending a crime boss. My things, I whispered. My grandmother's things. Her tea kettle, her pictures. We will buy new things. You cannot buy new memories. He fell silent, and his expression softened just a little. No, I cannot. I am sorry. Sorry. The word felt unnatural coming from him, as if he rarely used it. We rounded the corner onto my block, and I saw the glow before I saw the destruction. An orange light pulsed against the dark sky and my stomach plummeted. 3 fire trucks filled the small street, their hoses pouring water onto the upper floors of my building. Thick, black smoke billowed from the windows. My neighbors were gathered on the sidewalk, wrapped in coats over their pajamas, watching their homes be destroyed. The vehicle had barely stopped when I threw the door open and ran for the building. Isla. Dante's voice was strained behind me, but I kept going. A firefighter intercepted me, his grip firm on my arms. Ma'am, please stay back. I live here. The 4th floor, apartment 4C. Ma'am, the 4th floor is completely gone. I am so sorry. Was anyone still in there? Dante's voice cut through my haze of panic. He was suddenly beside me, and his presence made the firefighter stand a little taller. Are there any casualties? No, sir. Thank God. The building was pretty empty for a Saturday night. We have accounted for everyone. I leaned into Dante's side, a battle of relief and devastation raging inside me. No one had died, but my entire life, every item from my grandmother was gone. Where did it start? Dante asked. His tone was casual, but his body was rigid. It is too soon to be certain, but it seems to have started in 4C. Is that your apartment, ma'am? A deep, numbing cold spread through me. I whispered the word, yes. The firefighter's face softened with pity. I am truly sorry. It seems like it was an electrical fire, but the marshal will confirm. Do you have a place to go tonight? Dante's arm tightened around my waist, both a claim and a shield. She does. The firefighter gave a nod and walked off, calling out orders to his men. I watched the flames consume my apartment, my existence, everything I owned. My grandmother's kettle was probably melting, her pictures turning to black ash, her memory vanishing into the smoke. That was not electrical, Dante murmured, his mouth close to my ear. It was arson. It began in your unit and moved up. How can you be so sure? Because I have ordered enough fires to recognize one that was set on purpose. He turned me to face him, his hands framing my cheeks. Isla, you need to listen. This was not a random act. Someone is sending me a message. What kind of message? In the glow of the fire, his eyes were black holes. His face looked like it was carved from granite. They know you exist. They can get to you. And if I do not back away from their plans, you will be the cost. The reality of his words hit me like a physical blow. This happened because of you, because I went to your home, because I kissed you, and someone saw me get into your car. His grip on my face grew slightly firmer, because in my world, showing interest in a woman is the same as painting a target on her. Then let me go. The words escaped me before I could think, but as soon as I said them, I knew they were pointless. Tell whoever did this that I mean nothing to you. Tell them you made a mistake. He let out a laugh that had no humor in it. It is far too late for that. They saw Marco escort you to me. They saw the hours you spent inside. They know. Know what? He stared at me for a long, silent moment, his expression impossible to read. Then, so softly I barely heard him over the sirens, he said, "That you matter." Before I could even absorb that, a second sport utility vehicle, identical to ours, pulled to the curb. A door opened, and two men stepped out. One of them held a tablet. "Boss," the man said, offering the device to Dante, "we have the surveillance video from the next building over." Dante took it, holding it so I could also see. The video showed the front door of my apartment building. The timestamp was from 2 hours earlier. A man in dark clothing and a ball cap walked to my door. He scanned the street once, then used a key. Why did he have a key? He let himself inside. 17 minutes passed before he walked out again, his hands casually in his pockets. 15 minutes after that, the first signs of smoke appeared at my fourth-floor window. "Can you make out his face?" I asked. Dante's fingers slid over the screen, enlarging a single frame where the man glanced toward the camera. The picture was blurry, but you could still see his sharp features and a scar that cut through his left eyebrow. "Maxim Vulov," Dante said, his voice becoming dangerously low. "He is an enforcer for Viktor Antonov." "Who is Viktor Antonov?" "He runs the Russian syndicate in Chicago. We have been in territory negotiations for the last 6 months." He gave the tablet back to his man. "It seems Victor believes that burning down the apartment of a woman I like will make me more cooperative." The offhand way he said, "a woman I like," stole my breath. But this was not the right moment. "What will you do now?" He looked at me then, truly saw me, and I could see the conflict raging in his eyes. The cold mind of a crime lord was fighting with something more human, something vulnerable. "I am going to make sure you are safe," he said at last. "And then I am going to make Victor regret this day for the rest of his very brief life. You will come with me to the estate. You will remain there under my protection until this is over." "I cannot just do that." "Ela." He took my shoulders, his grip forcing me to look at him. "Your home is on fire. You have nothing left, no safe place to sleep. Victor knows who you are, what you look like, and he has already made one attempt on your life tonight. This is not a choice. I could find a hotel. I could get out of the city. He would find you." His hands moved down my arms, his touch surprisingly gentle against the steel in his voice. "His influence reaches every hotel, every airport, and every bus terminal. The only location where you are truly protected is with me, with my men around you. The men who follow you because you pay them. The men who follow me because I have spent a decade showing them I am worthy of their loyalty, because I defend what is mine. I am not yours." His eyes flashed with fire. "Are you not? An hour ago you were in my study kissing me as if you wanted to be devoured. You saw me as a man, not some monster. You made me feel a way I have not felt for years." He moved a step closer, his voice dropping low. "You may not be mine yet, but you will be. Because I am not letting you go." I should have been terrified. I should have struck him and run as fast as I could. Instead, a strange and dangerous excitement moved through me. What if I refuse? Then I will have Marco put you in the car, and I will ensure you cannot leave the estate. He tilted his head. "But you will not refuse. You are smart enough to understand that I am the only person standing between you and a bullet from the Russians." He was right, and I despised him for it. "Fine," I said. "But this is not permanent. It is only until you handle things with Victor." His lips pulled into a shape that was almost a smile, but it was far too predatory. Of course, temporary. But the words sounded like a lie coming from him as Marco held the car door open. I stole one final glance at my burning home. Inside those flames were the last physical memories of my grandmother, the last ties to my parents, the final proof that I had a life before this night. Now, I possessed nothing. Nothing but the protection of a crime lord, and a growing fear that I had entered a world from which I could never escape. The estate had a different feel at night. Dante guided me through halls I had not seen during my first time here. Marco followed us, a silent shadow in a tailored suit. We went up to the third floor and down a long corridor with many closed doors. Dante stopped at the very last one. "This will be your room," he said as he pushed it open. The bedroom was bigger than my entire apartment. A massive four-poster bed with navy silk sheets stood in the center. Tall windows overlooked the dark property and the lake in the distance. A fire was already burning in the fireplace. Someone had made the room ready for me. "There are clothes in the closet," Dante said. His tone was professional, as if he were a hotel manager instead of my captor. "They belonged to my sister from when she would stay here. You are about her size. The bathroom is over there. If you require anything, use the phone by the bed. Dial 0 to reach the house staff." I walked into the room, hugging myself tightly. The reality of my new life was beginning to crash down on me. I was a guest in a mobster's home, wearing his dead sister's clothes, all because someone wanted me dead. "Your sister?" I asked, clinging to the only piece of him that felt real. A shadow of pain crossed his face. "She passed away 5 years ago. I am so sorry." "Do not be. She was brilliant and reckless, and this world was not good enough for her." He glanced around the bedroom, and for a second, I saw his vulnerability. She was the only one who ever spoke the truth to me. She could see past the power and the money and the violence to the man underneath. "The way you see me," his eyes seemed to say. "How did she die?" I began. But then I stopped myself. "I am sorry. It is none of my business." "Cancer," he answered, his voice flat. "Leukemia. I had control of half this city, with politicians and judges in my debt, yet I could not stop my little sister's own body from betraying her." He gave a bitter laugh. "It turns out even my power has its limits." I moved toward him without thinking, my hand reaching for his. "Dante." He looked down at our joined hands, his thumb gently stroking my knuckles. "I think she would have liked you. She always told me I needed someone who was not afraid to challenge me. She sounds like she was wonderful." She was. He fell silent for a moment, then seemed to pull himself together. "You should get some sleep. We will decide what to do next in the morning." He started to leave, but I kept my grip on his hand. "Stay." The word came out of my mouth. He stopped, his back still to me. "Isla, I do not want to be alone tonight. Not after everything." My voice broke. "Please." He turned around slowly. The raw hunger in his eyes was a perfect match for the feeling in my own heart. "If I stay, I am not sleeping on the floor. And I am not certain I can be in that bed with you and not touch you." My heart pounded in my chest, but I did not release his hand. "Maybe I do not want you to keep your hands to yourself. You have been through a trauma tonight. You are in a fragile state. I will not take advantage of that." "What if I want you to?" His jaw tightened. "Do not say things you do not mean." I stepped even closer until I could feel the heat burning from his body. "My home is gone. My possessions are gone. My grandmother's memory is turning to ash at this very moment. The only thing I possess is this instant with you." I met his gaze, letting him see every ounce of my feelings. "So no, my mind is not clear. And yes, I am exposed, but I am also living, and I want to experience something besides terror and grief." I pushed up on my toes and kissed him. For a moment, he was stiff and did not respond. Then, with a sound that was part groan and part surrender, he put his arms around me and returned the kiss. This was not like the kiss in his study, which had been questioning and gentle. This was frantic and all-consuming. His hands tangled in my hair, tilting my head to deepen the kiss as he guided me backward to the bed. When my legs touched the mattress, I fell onto it, bringing him down with me. He braced himself on his forearms, his body pressing me into the silk. "Last chance," he murmured against my mouth. "Tell me to stop. Do not you dare." Something inside him broke. He took my mouth again, his kiss becoming savage, possessive. His hand moved beneath my shirt, his cold fingers tracing a path on my skin, and I arched against his touch. "You feel so soft," he whispered, leaving a trail of kisses along my jaw and down my neck. "So delicate." "I am not delicate." He leaned back just enough to see me, his pupils wide with want. "No, you are not. You are like steel covered in silk." He held my face in his hand. "You are incredible." I pulled him down for another kiss, my hands fumbling with the buttons of his shirt. He assisted me, shrugging the garment off and throwing it away. The firelight made his body look like a work of art. Toned muscles, olive skin, and a number of scars that hinted at a dangerous past. I followed one scar on his ribs with my finger. What caused this? A knife fight. I was 19 and foolish. He took my hand and kissed my palm. "I do not wish to discuss my scars at the moment." "What do you wish to discuss?" His eyes grew intense. "I do not wish to discuss anything." He kept that promise for the following hour. Later, we were a tangle of limbs in the silk sheets, my head on his chest while his fingers drew lazy circles on my back. The fire had diminished to embers, filling the room with shadows. "I need to leave," he said, but he did not move. "Stay. If I stay, my men will be aware. By the morning, my entire organization will know you were in my bed, and that is not good." He remained silent for a considerable time. "It paints a larger target on you. It announces to everyone that you are important to me." "Am I?" The question sounded weaker than I wanted. "Important to me?" He turned, moving onto his side to face me. His hand gently cupped my cheek, a tenderness that made my heart ache. "I have ended men for less than a sideways glance," he said softly. "I have dismantled companies, erased family lines, and burned whole territories to the ground. I feel no guilt. I do not lose sleep thinking about the bodies I have left in my wake." His thumb caressed my cheekbone. "But when I received that call tonight, when I believed for a second that you could have been inside that apartment as it burned," his jaw tightened. "I felt an emotion I had not experienced since my sister passed away. Fear." My breath hitched. "So yes, Isla, you are far more important than is safe for either one of us." I kissed him, a soft and slow kiss, hoping to communicate everything I could not say. When I moved back, his eyes seemed unusually bright. "Stay," I said again in a whisper. This time he offered no resistance. I woke up to sunlight pouring through the windows and the noise of angry voices from downstairs. Dante was already up, standing near the window, dressed in fresh clothing, black trousers, and a clean white shirt. He once again looked like the powerful crime boss. Every trace of the previous night's vulnerability was gone, hidden behind a cold authority. "What is going on?" I asked, sitting up and wrapping the sheet around me. He looked over, and his expression softened slightly when he saw me. "Victor delivered a message. He requests a meeting. That is a good thing, is it not? You can come to an agreement." He delivered his message inside a box. Dante's voice was flat, without any emotion. It held the head of Maxim Volulkov. A chill went through me. "The person who set my building on fire." "Yes. Victor asserts it was not sanctioned, that Maxim took action without his permission. He is presenting him as a gesture of apology." Dante's laugh was harsh. "This is Victor's method for displaying power while pretending to be rational." He is communicating. See how easily I get rid of my own people. Think about what I will do to my foes. What will you do? He stared at me for a long time, a dangerous and proprietary look in his eyes. I am going to remind Victor of the reason they call me the ghost, and then I am going to ensure he never poses a threat to what belongs to me again. Before I could answer, a loud knock came from the door. Boss, Marco's voice said, we have an issue. Dante walked across the room in 3 long steps and opened the door. Marco was standing there, his normally calm face now showing something close to panic. Victor is aware she is here. He just contacted us. He specifically brought up the Lebanese waitress who is staying in your deceased sister's room. The air in the room grew colder by 10 degrees. How? Dante's voice was dangerously low. We are not sure, but boss, he is no longer requesting a meeting. He is demanding one. He says if you do not arrive in 2 hours by yourself, he will take it as a declaration of war. Dante's hands balled into fists. Inform him that I will be there. Boss, that is clearly a trap. I am aware it is a trap. Inform him regardless. Marco paused, then gave a nod and left. Dante looked back at me, and I could see the wheels turning in his mind. The careful consideration of choices, the strategic game unfolding. You are going to see him, I stated. Yes. And if it is a trap? His mouth twisted into a smile that was both cold and cruel. Then Victor is about to discover that ghosts are exceptionally difficult to put down. He came back over to me, holding my face between his hands. Remain here. Do not exit this room. Marco will be right outside your door, and there are 12 men guarding the property. You are secure here. He gave me a hard, possessive kiss. I will return for you. I give you my word. Then he was out the door, leaving me by myself in his sister's room, in her clothes, watching from the window as he got into an SUV and drove off toward whatever ambush Viktor Antonov had prepared. I understood with perfect clarity that over the last 36 hours, I had stopped viewing Dante Marchetti as a threatening stranger and started seeing him as a person I could not bear to lose. I held out for 20 minutes before the anxiety became too much. 20 minutes of walking back and forth in the bedroom, staring at the clock, picturing all the ways Victor might kill Dante. 20 minutes of being trapped and powerless, while the man who had become vital to my existence walked into danger. 20 minutes until I resolved to do something reckless. Marco was posted by my door, just as Dante promised. He glanced up from his device when I came out, his face polite but resolute. Miss Hassan, Mr. Marchetti insisted that you stay inside your room. I need some fresh air, just to walk on the grounds. I am sorry, I cannot permit that, Marco. I moved nearer to him and spoke in a lower tone. My entire world just went up in flames. I passed the night in a dead woman's bed, dressed in her clothes, after being with a man I hardly know who might be on his way to his death. I need some fresh air. His expression changed slightly. Perhaps it was pity or empathy. 10 minutes. I will accompany you, and we will not lose sight of the house. It was an improvement over being confined. The property was stunning in the daylight. Perfectly kept gardens, stone walkways, and a huge lake that met the horizon. Armed men patrolled the area, their presence a strange mix of reassurance and fear. How long have you been in his employ? I asked Marco while we walked. 10 years, since I was 22. Why? He was silent for a bit, thinking about his response. My sister was ill. She required a treatment we could not pay for. Mr. Marchetti, he had recently taken control from his father. He found out about it somehow. He came to our apartment holding a check for the entire sum. Marco's voice grew gentle. He did not ask for a single thing in exchange. He just said that no one should have to see a relative die over money. That does not sound like a crime lord. Mr. Marchetti is a complex man. He can be merciless. I have seen him give the order to kill men without a second thought. But he looks after his own. He shields them. When you belong to him, you belong to him for life. Marco looked at me. That is both a gift and a burden. We had arrived at a stone bench with a view of the lake. I sat down, hugging myself even though the sun was warm. "He is going to get himself killed trying to shield me," I said softly. "Possibly. Or maybe you are the reason he needs to survive. To be reminded of why power is important, not for itself, but to protect the people you love." "I barely know him. Miss Hassan. I saw him last night when he took the call about your building. I have never seen him look that way, truly terrified. And this morning when he came downstairs and Victor's associates delivered that package," Marco shook his head. The expression in his eyes was not about business or turf. It was deeply personal. My phone vibrated in my pocket, but I did not own a phone. My own was destroyed with everything else. Marco's hand moved toward his gun. "That is not yours." I took it out with caution. It was a simple, disposable phone, the type sold at corner stores. A text message from an unfamiliar number was on the screen. "He is deceiving you. Ask him what he was really doing the night you first met." A cold dread washed over me. Marco, did Dante provide me with a phone? No. He stepped closer, his whole body alert. "Let me look at that." I passed it to him and watched his face grow grim as he read the words. "This is one of Victor's moves. A mind game. No matter what that message says, it is meant to make you question Mr. Marchetti, to sow discord." "But how did they manage to get a phone to me? I am supposedly in the most secure location in Chicago." Marco's jaw tensed. "We have an informant." A second text appeared. "Look at his phone history. The evening you met at the restaurant, he contacted your manager, offered him $10,000 to put you at his table." Ice flooded my veins. "That is a lie," Marco said instantly. "Victor is trying to deceive you. Then it should be easy to prove it is false." I held his gaze. "Call Tony, my manager. Ask him if Dante gave him money. Mr. Hassan, call him now. If it is not true, then we know Victor is just trying to get in my head. And if it is true..." My voice trembled. "Then I have to know who I am truly involved with." Marco seemed conflicted. His devotion to Dante fought with another feeling. Maybe it was respect for me, or the idea that I had a right to the truth. At last, he took out his own phone and made the call. "This is Marco, Mr. Marchetti's head of security. I have a question about a payment." A pause. "The evening Miss Hassan worked in the private room. Did you receive money in connection with her assignment?" A longer pause. "I understand. What was the amount?" His face became a perfect, unreadable mask. "And you failed to report this because..." "Right, thank you." "Thank..." He ended the call. The silence between us felt heavy. "How much?" I whispered. 20,000, not 10. Marco's voice was completely neutral. "Tony said a man visited him that afternoon before dinner. He described you. Flawlessly. Mr. Marchetti insisted you be his server that night. Tony said it felt wrong, but $20,000 buys a lot of silence." Another message appeared. "The entire meeting was his design. He researched you beforehand. The fake insult, the brave waitress who challenged the kingpin. Every moment was a script. You are not special. You are a target." My hand started to tremble around the phone. "Miss Hassan, you cannot believe this. Victor is just... Why would Dante do this?" I shot to my feet, my thoughts a blur. Why create such an elaborate trap? Why not just ask me out? "I do not know," Marco confessed. "But there must be a good reason. Is there?" I gave a bitter laugh. "Or is the reason exactly what Victor claims? That I am just a gullible fool who walked right into his trap? You are not gullible. And what Mr. Marchetti feels for you is real." I saw his expression last night. Real feelings born from a manufactured encounter. I walked away from the bench, unable to stand still. My God, I am such an idiot. The way he looked at me, as if I were the first woman to ever defy him. That was just part of the act, was it not? He must have a type. Lonely women with dead family members who speak Arabic. We are easy prey for his twisted games. "Miss Hassan, Please, let us go back inside. I have to think. Marco looked like he wanted to protest, but he simply nodded. We returned in silence, my mind spinning out of control. In the time it took to reach my room, 3 more texts arrived. He knew your grandmother's name before you said it. The fire was not started by Victor's men. He set it to make you dependent. You are not his first. Ask him about Isabella. Ask what he did to her. I threw the door open and slumped against it, fighting for breath. It could not be true. The raw emotion in Dante's eyes, the protective way he held me, the vulnerability he showed when he spoke of his sister. That could not all be a performance, could it? I surveyed the room through a new lens. His sister's room. A woman dead for 5 years. It was so convenient that I was her exact size, that all her clothes fit me. It was so convenient that this room was prepared and waiting. How many other women had been in this bed, wearing these clothes, believing they were unique? Who was Isabella? The door flew open. Dante was there, his face a mask of fury. He was splattered with blood that was not his. My mind went blank at the sheer amount of it. Are you all right? He demanded, closing the distance between us in 3 long steps. His hands moved over me, searching for any sign of injury. I recoiled from his touch. Do not touch me. He stopped cold. Ela, what is it? Did you give my manager $20,000 to make sure I was at your table? His face became perfectly unreadable. Answer me, Dante. Did you arrange for us to meet? He was silent for a long moment before he answered quietly. Yes. The word hit me like a punch. Why? Because I had seen you. He pushed a hand through his blood-streaked hair. It was 3 weeks ago, at a coffee shop near the university. You were reading, totally lost in your book. When the barista called out your order, you answered in Arabic without even thinking. He paused. You reminded me of someone. Your sister. He became completely still. How did you know? Victor has been sending me messages. He told me all about your little plan, your lies, your manipulation. I held out the burner phone. How did this get past your men, Dante? How did Victor manage to get a phone to me inside your fortress? His face hardened into stone. Show me. I threw the phone to him. He read through the messages, his jaw tightening with every word. Most of this is a lie, he said when he finished, but not all of it. No. He looked at me then, and I saw a raw, desperate look in his eyes. Not all of it. I did see you before that night. I did arrange for you to serve me. I did. He stopped. I wanted to meet you, and I knew you would never say yes to a date if I introduced myself as Dante Marchetti. So you created a scene where I would insult you, so you could pretend to be impressed by my courage. My God, Dante, do you realize how twisted that is? Yes. There was no defense in his voice, only flat acceptance. I understand perfectly how twisted it is. But Ela, everything that came after, everything we shared, that was real. How am I supposed to know that? How can I believe a single word you say when this entire thing started with a lie? Because I am telling you the truth now, his voice grew louder. Because it would be easier to let you believe Victor's story, that you are just a pawn, that I am using you in some game. That would be the safer path, but I will not lie to you again. Who is Isabella? The name struck him like a physical blow, the color drained from his face. Where did you hear that name? Victor told me about her. He said I should ask you what happened. He said I was not the first. Dante sank onto the edge of the bed and buried his head in his hands. When he looked up again, his eyes were haunted. Isabella was my sister's best friend. They were like sisters. After she died, Isabella tried to help me. She tried to be there for me. I thought... He trailed off. I thought I could learn to care for someone again, to let someone close. We were together for 6 months. What happened to her? Victor happened. He learned about her, and he used her. He kidnapped her and demanded I give up territory to get her back. His voice became empty. I got her back, but they had tortured her, broken her spirit. She looked at me as if I was the monster who put her in that position, and she was not wrong. I gave her enough money to disappear and start a new life. I have not seen her in 3 years. The pain in his voice was undeniable, but was it genuine? So you learned not to bring innocent people into your life, and yet, I am here. He moved toward me with a deliberate slowness, the way someone might approach a wounded animal. You are here, and I could not help myself. The moment I saw you in that coffee shop, so full of life and fire, completely unaware of your own power, I knew I wanted that. I wanted you. So, yes, I arranged for us to meet. I manipulated events to pull you into my world. He stopped just shy of me, his gaze locked with mine. But the fire, Isla, that was Victor. Every single word he sent you was a lie. I would never harm you just to make you need me. I would never. His voice broke. You are too important. I do not know what to believe. Then do not believe what I say. Believe what I have done. He took out his phone, found something, and held it out. The screen showed a photo of Maxim Volulkov's body, discarded in an alley. I had no idea Victor sent this to me as a twisted apology. I believed he had actually ordered the hit on Maxim, so I went to that meeting prepared for a fight, ready to eliminate the threat to you. He swiped to a different picture. It was Viktor Antonov, clearly dead, his fine suit soaked in blood. I killed him, Isla. He was the head of the Russian syndicate in Chicago. I have now started a war that will cost me millions to end. It will bring federal scrutiny that I cannot afford. It will throw half of my operations into chaos. His eyes were burning. I did it all because he threatened you, because he made you doubt what we have, because he tried to take you from me. My breath hitched. Dante. So you want to know what is real? This is real. The blood on my hands is real. The war I just ignited is real. And the fact that I would do it all over again without hesitation if it meant you were safe, that is also real. He reached out slowly, giving me the chance to pull back, and cupped my face with his blood-stained hands. I am not a good man, Ela. I have done horrible things. I will do horrible things again. But my feelings for you are the most honest part of my life. Tears started to burn in my eyes. I do not know if I can trust you. Then let me earn that trust again. His thumbs gently wiped away tears I did not know had fallen. Stay with me. Let me prove that you are not a target or a game or a substitute for my sister. Let me show you that what is between us is real. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe him with a desperation that was a physical ache. But trust, once shattered, never heals perfectly. I need time, I whispered. I need space to think without you standing there, looking at me like that. His face fractured with pain, but he gave a small nod. Okay, I will give you space. But Isla, he leaned in and pressed his forehead against mine. Please do not run. Please do not go. Let me keep you safe while you decide if you can forgive me. Why should I stay? Because for all of it, the lies, the manipulation, the violence, you are safer here with me than anywhere else in this city. Victor's men will want revenge, and you are tied to me now, whether we are together or apart. His voice grew quiet. And because I believe you feel this thing between us too, this connection that defies logic and safety in any kind of sense. He was right. Damn him, he was right. I will stay, I said, for now. But we are not. This is not. I know. He placed a soft kiss on my forehead. Take all the time you need. He turned and left, shutting the door quietly. I stood alone in the room, surrounded by a dead woman's possessions, wearing her clothes, sleeping in her bed. I wondered which version of Dante Marchetti was the real one. Was it the cold mastermind who engineered our meeting, or the broken man who had just killed for me? And which of them was more dangerous to my heart? 3 days went by in a strange stillness. I stayed in the room, which felt like both my prison and my sanctuary. Meals would appear outside my door, brought by silent staff who never spoke to me. Marco checked on me twice each day. His face was always carefully blank as he asked if I needed anything. My answer was always no. The burner phone sat on the nightstand, quiet. There would be no more messages from Victor, because Victor was gone. He was killed by the man whose bloody hands had held my face with such tenderness. I should have been horrified. Dante had killed a man. He had probably killed many people, considering his business. He was the exact person my grandmother had warned me to stay away from. Violent, dangerous, and without a moral compass. But when I closed my eyes, I did not see a monster. I saw the look in his eyes when he spoke of his sister, the raw vulnerability when he admitted to arranging our meeting, the pure desperation when I asked for space. On the fourth day, I left the room. The house felt different, now that I was walking through it by choice instead of being led. I passed through hallways lined with portraits of Marchetti men from generations past, all of them with the same sharp looks and cold eyes. I saw a picture of a young Dante, his arm around a girl who I knew was his sister. They were both smiling at something just out of the picture. He looked so young, so free of burdens. I discovered the library on the second floor. It was a huge room with leather chairs and shelves that reached the ceiling. A fire was burning in the fireplace, even though it was warm outside. Dante was standing by the windows with his hands in his pockets, looking out at the lake. He did not turn when I came in, but his body tensed. He knew I was there. "I thought you were giving me space," I said. "I am. This is my house. I have to be in it somewhere." His voice was flat and controlled. "You are welcome to use the library. I can go if you would like. Do not." I walked closer, looking at his profile. He looked worn out. There were dark circles under his eyes, and his jaw was covered in a few days of stubble. "Have you slept?" "Not much." "Because of Victor?" "Because of you." The unfiltered honesty in his voice made me catch my breath. He finally turned to face me, and I could see how much the last few days had cost him. It was etched into his face. I keep going over that conversation in my mind, trying to find something I could have said differently. "Some way to make you see." He stopped. "But there is nothing, is there? What I did was wrong. No explanation can change that." I went to the window and stood next to him, careful not to touch. Down below, I could see Marco and some other men on patrol. They were a constant reminder of the danger outside these walls. "Why me?" I asked softly. "Of all the people in Chicago, why did you notice me?" He was silent for a while, thinking about his answer. "Do you believe in ghosts, Isla?" The strange question threw me off. "What?" After my sister died, this house felt haunted. Not in a literal sense. I do not believe in that. But everywhere I turned, I saw her. Her favorite chair, the piano she played, the gardens where she would sit and read for hours. He gestured toward the grounds. I was drowning in the space she left behind. Nothing helped me. Not my work, not violence, nothing. And then you saw me. And then I saw you. You were in that coffee shop, reading as if the rest of the world did not exist. You looked so calm, so comfortable being alone. He turned to me completely. And when you answered in Arabic without a second thought, for just a moment I heard my sister's voice. She used to switch languages in the middle of a sentence without even knowing it. My heart ached. "I am not her. I know." His hand started to lift, as if to touch me, but then it dropped back to his side. I realized that almost right away. You are not her. You are more fierce, more defiant. Where she was soft, you are sharp. Where she trusted people, you question everything. A faint smile appeared. "The moment you called me a coward, I knew you were not like her at all. You were entirely your own person. But you still manipulated our meeting." "Yes, because I am a selfish man who wanted to get to know you, and I knew you would never agree to it if you knew who I really was." He stepped closer. "I told myself I just wanted one meeting, one conversation with someone who reminded me what it was like to feel human. But then you stood there, trembling but defiant and brave, and I—" He trailed off. "I wanted more. This is not a romance novel, Dante. You cannot just arrange a meeting and expect me to swoon because you are both charming and dangerous. I know. His voice was rough with emotion. I know I am asking for things I do not deserve. Forgiveness, trust, a chance to show you I can be better than my darkest actions. His eyes held mine. But I am asking anyway. Because the other choice, letting you walk away and never seeing you again, I cannot survive that. You barely know me. I know you are brave enough to call a crime boss a coward. I know you speak 3 languages but still think in Arabic when you get nervous. I know you loved your grandmother so much that losing her things in that fire hurt you more than losing the whole building. I know you are lonely, but you prefer being alone to being with people who do not truly see you. He moved in closer. I know that you kiss like you are scared it will be your last. You sleep curled on your left side. You take mint in your tea because it is how your grandmother made it. Tears started to burn in my eyes. How could you know that? I pay attention. Every single moment I have with you is important. I am desperately obsessed with learning what makes you smile. This is crazy. We have known each other for less than a week. 5 days, he corrected me. It has been 5 days since you came into my life and changed everything. 5 days since I felt something matter besides territory and control. He reached for me slowly, giving me a chance to back away. He tucked a piece of my hair behind my ear. I am not good at this, he said in a low voice. I am not good with relationships, with feelings, with being vulnerable. My father beat that out of me when I was young. But for you, I want to try. I want to be the man you picture when you look beyond the violence. The man who is worthy of your forgiveness. I shut my eyes, trying to win the war inside my own chest. Every logical thought told me to run away. He was a dangerous man. He had lied. He had killed. But my heart, that foolish, reckless part of me, wanted to stay right where I was. I cannot promise that I will stay here forever, I whispered. And I cannot promise I will forgive you for everything. But his voice was so quiet I could barely hear it. But I can promise I will try to give you the chance to prove you are not just using me again. The relief on his face was so intense it was almost painful to see. He pulled me close to him, his arms wrapped around me, as if he feared I would vanish. Thank you, he whispered into my hair. Thank you. I swear, Isla, I will spend every single day earning back your trust. I will prove to you that this is real. I let my body relax against his. For just a moment, I let myself feel safe. But even then, a small voice in my head whispered a warning. Trust was a fragile thing, and Dante Marchetti was a man who worked with violence and lies. No matter how much I wanted to believe in his gentle touch, his world was waiting for us. It was a reality that was about to come crashing down on us both. The explosion happened at sunrise. I woke up to the sound of glass shattering. Dante's arms were already around me, pulling me out of the bed and down to the floor in one smooth motion. His body shielded mine as pieces of the ceiling rained down. Stay down, he ordered. His voice was sharp with authority. Outside, gunfire started. We heard the quick bursts of automatic weapons and the deeper sound of shotguns. Men were shouting in both Russian and Italian. What is happening? I gasped. It is Victor's men. They are here for revenge. He was already pulling me toward the bathroom. It was the only room with no windows. Stay in here. Lock the door. Do not open it for anyone but me or Marco. Dante. He gave me a hard, fast kiss. I will come back for you. I promise. Then he was gone. I was alone in the bathroom, listening to the sounds of a battle unfolding just outside the door. That bathroom became my entire world. I sat in the huge marble tub. It was empty, but it felt safer than being out in the open. I listened to the chaos. The shooting grew louder. Sometimes it was so close I could hear men shouting orders. Other times it was distant, and I could almost pretend it was not happening here. My phone, the real one Dante had given me yesterday, buzzed. It was a text from him. Still alive, stay put, love you, love you. I never expected those 2 words. Those 2 words changed everything. Another explosion shook the entire house. This one was farther away. The lights flickered but did not go out. I pulled my knees into my chest and made myself as small as I could. I tried not to think about how this could end. Dante could be killed. I could be killed. We could both die right here, while his entire empire fell apart. Time lost all meaning. I could not tell if minutes or hours had passed. The gunfire slowly faded. It was replaced by angry shouting in Italian. I heard the organized sound of men taking back control. Then there was silence. A complete and terrible silence. I stared at the bathroom door, hardly breathing. Was it finished? Had Dante won? Or was his body lying somewhere in this giant house while I hid like a coward? A knock on the door made me flinch. Miss Hassan, it is Marco. It is safe now. I did not move. Victor's men could have taken Marco. They could be using him to get me to come out. Miss Hassan, I know you are afraid, but it is really me. Mr. Marchetti sent me. He is. Marco's voice cracked just a little. He is asking for you. That small break in his voice convinced me. I climbed out of the tub. My legs were shaking as I unlocked the door. Marco was standing in the hallway, covered in dust and blood. His left arm was hanging at a strange angle, probably broken, but his eyes were clear and his weapon was in its holster. Is he alive? You need to come with me now. I followed him through the wreckage of what was once Dante's beautiful home. The windows were blown out. The walls were scarred with bullet holes. Blood was smeared across the marble floors. There were bodies. I tried my best not to look at them. We went down to the first floor and through a door I had never seen before. We went down a set of stairs into a basement I did not know was there. The basement was made of reinforced concrete. It was a bunker. It was a safe room built to survive an attack just like this one. Dante was sitting in a chair in the middle of the room. His remaining men stood around him. His shirt was gone. A doctor, a woman with steady hands, was stitching a long cut across his ribs. His eyes met mine as soon as I walked in. Relief washed over his face. Ela. I was already moving across the room before I even decided to. I put my hands on his face, looking for other injuries. Are you okay? How bad is it? I am fine. He took my hands and pressed a kiss into my palms. The doctor made a sound of disapproval at his movement. It is just a graze. It looks much worse than it is. You were shot. Barely. It is a flesh wound. He winced when the doctor pulled another stitch tight. How are you? Did any of them get near your room? No, I stayed in the bathroom like you told me to. I looked at the dozen men in the room. They were all that was left of his security team. How many did we lose? The fact that I said we instead of you was not missed. Marco raised his eyebrows. Dante's grip on my hands got tighter. 7 dead. 3 are in critical condition. His voice was flat and empty of emotion. Victor's second in command, a man named Alexei, led the attack. They came with 20 men. We killed 18 of them and captured 2. And Alexei, a darkness passed over Dante's face, is being questioned. That meant he was being tortured. I should have felt sick, but all I felt was relief. These men had tried to kill Dante, and I was learning that I was capable of anything. The doctor tied the last stitch and stepped away. You need to rest. No difficult activity for at least a week. And if that wound starts to bleed again... I know. Thank you, Teresa. He stood up, testing how he could move. Then he looked at his men. Marco, organize the cleanup and security. I want double the guards on the perimeter until we know if this was their only move. Get our injured men to the hospital through the private entrance. Someone call the councilman. We need the police to ignore what happened here. His men scattered, leaving us alone with Teresa, who was packing her medical bag. You said you loved me, I said suddenly. Dante froze. What? The text you sent. During the attack you said, love you. My heart was pounding. Did you mean it? He walked toward me slowly. being careful with his injured side. He cupped my face with his hands, his touch so gentle. Yes, he said. It was that simple. I meant it. I think I have meant it since you called me a coward in Arabic. I just never had the courage to say it out loud. That is insane. We hardly know each other. I do not care. His thumb traced a line on my cheek. He said it did not matter if this was too fast, too much, or too dangerous. He would love me whether I stayed or left, and that was a fact. I felt tears sting my eyes. This was insane. His house was just attacked. People were dead. He had been shot. This was not the moment for this. He insisted it was the perfect moment. He pressed his forehead against mine, explaining he had just faced death without telling me how he felt. He would not make that mistake again. I kissed him with a desperate fire, pouring every emotion I could not name into it. We pulled away, both of us breathing heavily. He gave me a rare, true smile that changed his entire face. So, does that mean you are staying? I looked at the concrete bunker, the supplies, the aftermath of violence. I saw Dante, bandaged and bleeding, looking at me as if I was his only anchor to this world. I do not know, I answered with total honesty. I do not know if I can live like this, where people try to kill us, where violence is normal, where you might not survive your next fight. His face fell. I understand, he said, but I am not sure I can live without you either. Saying the words felt like tearing myself open. You are a killer, a manipulator, and dangerous. You engineered our first meeting. You pulled me into your war. You are every red flag I should run from. I know. And still, when I thought you were going to die, when I sat in that tub listening to the guns, my voice trembled. All I could think was that you had to live, that I could not lose you. You had become essential to me, despite everything. Isla. So I am not sure if I am staying for the right reasons, or because I am afraid, or because I love you too. The confession spilled out of me. I only know that right here, right now, I am choosing you. The kiss he gave me then was unlike any before. It was softer, slower, filled with promises and hope and a terrible, beautiful love. Right now is all we need, he whispered against my lips. We can figure out the rest together. Teresa cleared her throat from across the room. If you two are finished with your romance in my medical area, I have other patients who need me. We broke apart, smiling, finding a moment of peace in a bunker after a battle. Dante took my hand, weaving his fingers through mine. Come on, he said. Let us get out of here. When we reached the main floor, the daylight revealed the true destruction. Windows were gone, bullet holes scarred the walls, and blood stained the marble floors. I will rebuild it all, Dante said, seeing where I was looking. I will make it stronger, safer, a fortress where no one can hurt us. Or, I offered quietly, we could just leave. We could go somewhere Victor's men would never find us. A place where you are not a target. He looked at me as if I had suggested he could fly. Leave Chicago? Is that really so crazy? You have the money and the means. We could vanish. And abandon my people? He shook his head. Ela, I cannot. Families rely on me to protect them. The businesses I control. He paused. This is my identity. I am the ghost of Chicago. I cannot leave that behind. Even if staying here gets you killed. Even then, he said, pulling me in. But I can make this place safer for you. For us. This attack revealed all my weaknesses. I know what I need to fix. And when I am done, when I have dealt with every single threat, there will always be a new threat. That is how your world works. Then I will deal with those too. His voice was like stone. I will burn down every rival organization in this city to keep you safe. I looked at this powerful, dangerous man, who was somehow mine. It was the most romantic and the most terrifying thing he could have said. And he meant every word. He would set the world on fire for me. The only question was if I could stand to live in the ashes. 2 weeks passed. I stood before a mirror in Dante's reinforced master bedroom, wearing an unfamiliar dress. It was a midnight blue silk that fit me perfectly and made my skin seem to glow. It probably cost enough to feed a village. It was one of dozens of new designer clothes in my closet, all bought for me by the man who went to war with the entire Chicago underworld for my safety. Tonight was the gala, a charity fundraiser for a children's hospital, attended by the city's elite, both legitimate and criminal. Dante was required to attend by people so powerful even he could not say no. I was going as his date. It was his way of announcing to the world that I was important, that I was his, and that hurting me meant hurting him. "You look stunning." I turned. Dante stood in the doorway, breathtaking in a perfectly tailored black tuxedo. His ribs were healed, but he still favored that side just a little. The doctor had been correct. It was a minor wound. But the mental scars from the attack were much deeper. He had become obsessed with fortifying his home, installing new security, hiring more guards, and putting in windows that could stop explosions. His home was now a fortress, and he was a harder version of the man I first met. But when his eyes met mine, the coldness melted away, showing the man beneath. "You look pretty good yourself," I replied, fixing his bow tie. "Are you ready to pretend we are normal for a few hours?" "I am never normal. But with you, I can pretend." He took my hands and his expression became serious. "You do not have to do this. I can go by myself. You would be safer if you stayed here. I am going." I made up my mind days ago. I watched him change his entire operation just to reduce the risk to me. "We are a team now, remember?" "Together," he repeated, like the word was a prayer. The ride to the hotel for the gala felt like a dream. Marco drove, and 2 other cars full of guards followed us. Dante held my hand the whole time. His thumb drew random circles on my skin. "I have never taken anyone to one of these things," he said softly. "I never wanted to. It is too much exposure, too much danger." "Then why now?" "Because hiding you does not keep you safe. It just makes you a ghost. I want everyone in this city to know that you belong to me, that you are protected. If they touch you, they will have to deal with me." It was possessive and wrong, but somehow it still felt romantic. That was Dante. The hotel ballroom was breathtaking. It was filled with crystal chandeliers, ice sculptures, and an orchestra playing softly in a corner. The city's most powerful people walked around in expensive clothes with fake smiles. They made small talk that was meaningless, and deals that were everything. When Dante walked in, a wave of silence moved through the room. Conversations stopped. Heads turned to look. And when they saw me on his arm, the whispers began. "He never brings anyone." "Who is she?" "I heard his estate was attacked." Dante's hand tightened on mine. "Ignore them. It is hard to ignore them when they are all staring. They are just jealous. You are the most beautiful woman here, and they all know it." I had to laugh, even though I was nervous. "You are biased." "Completely," he said. He led me toward the bar. "Get something strong." While he was ordering, I looked at the crowd. I saw politicians from the news. I saw businessmen whose companies were probably fronts for crime. I saw socialites who spent their days gossiping and using their own kind of power. And then I saw him. Across the room, a man I did not know was watching us with cold eyes. Every instinct inside me started screaming danger. "Dante," I whispered. "Who is that?" He looked where I was looking, and his entire body went stiff. "Damn it! What is it? Who is he?" "Antonio Ricci," I heard Dante say in a tightly controlled voice. "He runs the Italian syndicate out of New York. He has wanted a piece of Chicago for a long time. I have been the one stopping him. He is here because Victor is dead, creating a power vacuum. He knows the attack on my home left me vulnerable." Dante's hand rested on my lower back, both possessive and protective. He is here to make his move. Before I could say anything, Antonio Ricci was crossing the room, walking with the swagger of a man who always gets his way. He was older than Dante, maybe 50, with silver hair and a smile that never touched his cold eyes. "Marchetti," he said, his Italian accent heavy. "I am surprised to see you. I heard your home was in shambles." "Reports of my downfall have been greatly exaggerated," Dante replied with an icy tone. "Ricci, I do not recall seeing your name on the guest list. A last-minute change." The councilman was happy to make room for me. His eyes moved to me, sizing me up. "And who is this beautiful companion? That is none of your business. Come on, Marchetti, we are colleagues, are we not? You can at least introduce me." The air between them felt electric with hostility. Every instinct told me to retreat, to become small and unnoticed. Instead, I held out my hand. "Layla Hassan, it is a pleasure to meet you." Antonio took my hand, bowing over it like a gentleman from another era. He brushed his lips against my knuckles, and I could feel Dante's anger simmering next to me. "The pleasure is all mine, Miss Hassan." Antonio stood up straight, but did not let go of my hand. "So tell me, how does a lovely woman like you find herself with a dangerous man like Marchetti?" "Very carefully," I said, pulling my hand free, and with my eyes wide open. His smile grew. "Smart and beautiful. You have fine taste, Marchetti. I will grant you that. Did you need something, Richie? Or did you just come here to annoy me?" "As a matter of fact, yes. I came to give you an offer." Antonio's face became predatory. "Victor's old territory is now available. Instead of a costly and bloody war, why do we not simply divide it? You can have the north side, and I will take the south. We can coexist, each other's operations, and avoid pointless bloodshed." "No. No." Antonio's eyebrows lifted. "Just like that? You refuse to even negotiate terms? There is nothing to negotiate. Chicago belongs to me, every part of it. If you need new territory, go back to New York. I am afraid that is not an option. You see, I have already made promises to certain individuals, promises that require my expansion into Chicago." His eyes slid over to me once more. It would be a shame if those promises could not be kept. The threat was unmistakable. If Dante refused, people would get hurt, and I might be one of them. Dante moved to stand slightly in front of me, shielding me from Antonio's stare. "Let me be perfectly clear, Richie. You are not expanding into Chicago. You will not take over Victor's territory. You will not make deals with my politicians or bribe my judges. And if you ever threaten what is mine again— What? You will kill me in a room full of witnesses?" Antonio let out a laugh. "You are not that foolish, Marchetti. You are no longer the ghost. You are a man with weaknesses, a man with things to lose." His eyes locked on me. "That is what makes you vulnerable." It all happened in an instant. Dante's fist slammed into Antonio's jaw with a sickening crack that silenced the ballroom. Antonio fell back, blood streaming from his lip. His men, who I had not seen until now, suddenly rushed forward. Dante's men moved to meet them. In a matter of seconds, the sophisticated party had become a tense standoff. Two factions of armed men were aimed at each other, while guests screamed and fled. "Dante, stop!" I grabbed his arm, trying to hold him back. He gently but firmly pushed me away, his focus entirely on Antonio. "This is what you were hoping for, was it not, Richie? Provoke me in public, make me appear unstable, convince the other families that my control is slipping." Antonio pressed a handkerchief to his bleeding mouth, his face glowing with victory despite the pain. "I only wanted to confirm the rumors, to see if the ghost had truly found his weakness." His gaze fixed on me. "It seems the rumors were true." Dante drew his weapon. The motion was fluid, expert, and lethal. He pressed the barrel of the gun to Antonio's forehead before anyone could even blink. "This is what is going to happen," Dante said. His voice was calm and conversational, a strange contrast to the gun in his hand. "You will leave Chicago tonight. You will tell everyone that we met and had a productive conversation about our territories. You will smile and shake hands, and you will pretend this encounter never happened. If you refuse, I will pull this trigger. Your men will pull theirs, and we will all die in this expensive hotel ballroom. That would be unfortunate, but I am prepared for that result. Are you? For a long moment, no one moved. The music had stopped. The few civilians left pressed themselves against the walls, their phones recording everything. This would be on every news channel by morning. Finally, Antonio gave a cold, calculating smile. You are bluffing. You would not risk her life. He gestured toward me, and I saw with perfect clarity this was his plan all along. He wanted to give Dante an impossible choice: start a war that could kill me, or back down and show that love had made him weak. You are right, Dante said quietly. I would not risk her life. That is why I ensured she was safe before I even came here. He looked at me, and I saw the apology in his eyes an instant before Marco's arms seized me from behind. He pulled me backward toward an exit. No, I fought back, but Marco was far too strong. Dante, do not do this. Get her out of here, Dante ordered, his weapon still aimed at Antonio's head. Now! Marco dragged me through the emergency doors as I continued to protest. The last thing I saw was Dante standing alone against Antonio Ricci and his entire crew. He was willing to die to show that loving me did not make him weak. It made him stronger. The waiting was the hardest part. Marco drove me to the estate at a speed that had to be illegal. He put me in the newly fortified safe room, then vanished back into the night. He was going to help Dante. He was going to fight in the war that started at that gala. I sat on the bunker's concrete floor in my beautiful, now torn and filthy dress, and I waited. Hours went by, or maybe it was only minutes. Time meant nothing in that windowless space. My phone buzzed. It was a text from a number I did not recognize. Your boyfriend made a poor choice. Check the news. With shaking hands, I opened a news website. The headline made my blood turn to ice. Shootout at Charity Gala. Multiple casualties. Mob boss Dante Marchetti presumed dead. No, no, no. My fingers were numb as I clicked on the article. A violent clash at the St. Regis Hotel's yearly charity event left 7 dead and 12 injured tonight. Sources confirmed that Chicago crime boss Dante Marchetti had an armed standoff with New York's syndicate leader, Antonio Ricci. When police got there, they discovered several bodies, but saw no sign of Marchetti. The authorities are handling this as a homicide investigation. Marchetti is wanted for questioning. The phone slipped from my grasp. He was gone. Dante was dead. The man I loved. The man who had killed for me. The man who had promised he would come back. The bunker door opened. I looked up. I expected to see Marco, to hear the worst news, for my world to finally crumble. Instead, Dante walked in. He was covered in so much blood. His tuxedo was ruined. But he was alive. He was standing right here. He was real. I threw myself at him, not caring about the blood, not caring about anything except that he was solid and breathing. You are alive, I cried into his chest. You are alive. The news said you were… Shh. His arms wrapped around me, tight and safe. I am okay. I am here. The news said you were dead. The news is reporting what I wanted them to report. He pulled back so he could look at me, his hands gently holding my face. I am sorry. I am so sorry I scared you, but it had to seem authentic. I had to convince Antonio and anyone else who might challenge me that the ghost had truly died. I do not understand. He led me to a chair, sat down, and pulled me onto his lap as if he could not stand to let me go. After you left, Antonio made his play. His men pulled their weapons. My men did the same. It should have been a bloodbath. But I had a plan for this. I had Marco plant explosives in the hotel's electrical system. When I gave the signal, the lights went out. In the darkness and confusion, my men evacuated everyone. That included Antonio's men, who I had already paid to switch sides. The bodies, I whispered. They were volunteers from the morgue, already deceased, dressed to look like my men and his. We staged it to look like we had all killed one another. His face was grim. By the time police arrived, we were long gone. All of us. Antonio is on a flight back to New York at this very moment, convinced I am dead. The other families believe I am dead. Even the federal agents think I am dead. So what happens next? His hands tightened on my waist. Now, I disappear. Dante Marchetti died in that ballroom. And someone new, a man with a different name and a clean past, gets to live on. The meaning of his words crashed into me. You are leaving Chicago. We are leaving Chicago, he corrected me. If you will come with me. I stared at him while my mind raced. You would give it all up? Your empire? Your power? Your name? In a heartbeat. His eyes were intense. Ela, these last few weeks with you showed me something I never knew. Power is worthless without someone to share it with. Territory is only dirt. Money is only paper. But you, his voice cracked with emotion, you are everything. Where could we possibly go? Anywhere you want. I have accounts all over the world, properties and safe places Victor and Antonio could never find. No one would ever dream of searching for us there. We could vanish and go anywhere, Greece, Argentina, or Japan. We could start a new life and build it from scratch. As for your men, the families that count on you, Marco is ready to lead. My years of training have prepared him. He is intelligent, loyal, and can be merciless when necessary. Chicago will be in capable hands. I stared at him, this powerful and dangerous man who staged his own demise to protect me from a gang war. He was offering me a new world. He was giving me a future, my freedom, and a chance to be more than a vulnerability. I have one requirement, I told him. He simply said, anything. No more deception, no more hidden agendas. Our life together will not be orchestrated by you. From now on, we are partners. We decide things as a team. You cannot shield me by leaving me in ignorance. A rare, true smile lit up his face, making him look young again. You have a deal. No more secrets. It will be just the two of us navigating what comes next. Even when you make mistakes. Especially then, he murmured before a soft kiss. I will be right there to help you correct them. A laugh broke from my lips, a chaotic sound of pure relief and impossibly deep love. This is completely mad, I said. He agreed. It is. But madness seems to be what we do best. So where is our first stop? He produced a phone, probably a burner, and showed me a stone villa on a Greek island. It had blue shutters and was surrounded by olive trees, overlooking the magnificent sea. It has belonged to my family for ages. I am the only one who knows about it. We can hide there and plan our future. We could plant a garden, learn to cook, and act like two ordinary people who fell in love in an ordinary way. We can never be ordinary, I reminded him. No, he conceded, but we can give it a try. I gazed at the image of the villa and saw myself there. I imagined mornings with Dante and nights beneath Greek stars. I saw a life free from violence, danger, and death. It should have felt like an unattainable fantasy, a beautiful deception, but it felt like I was finally going home. All right, I said. Let's vanish. His smile was as bright as the sun. He kissed me again, a deeper kiss filled with promises, hope, and a desperate, beautiful love. When do we go? I whispered against his lips. We go now, tonight, before anyone learns that I am still alive. But I have nothing, no clothes or any of my things. We can buy everything new. We can start over as anyone we choose to be. My thoughts drifted to my grandmother. She escaped from Lebanon with only her clothes and a copper kettle. With pure willpower, she created a new life in a strange land. She taught me that home was not a location, but the people you hold dear. My grandmother would have liked you, I said quietly. She also would have known you were trouble. Would she have been mistaken? No, I smiled. But she would have also said that the most worthwhile things in life are often trouble. 3 hours later, we were flying to Greece on a private jet. I looked out the window as Chicago shrank below us. It was the city of my birth, the city where I had lost everything, but also where I had gained something far greater than security. Dante was next to me, holding my hand and rubbing my skin in that comforting way he had. Any regrets? He asked. I thought of my apartment engulfed in flames, my grandmother's keepsakes turned to ash, and the simple life I had before a dangerous man changed my world forever. No, I replied with absolute honesty. I have no regrets. And you? He brought my hand to his mouth, kissing every knuckle with gentle care. My single regret is that I did not find you earlier, all the time we could have had. We have a lifetime now, I told him, and I will use every moment to love you. The sun began to rise over the Atlantic as we traveled east toward a new identity and a future of our own making. Far below us, news outlets were reporting the death of Dante Marchetti. Chicago's ghost was dead, they said, killed in a gunfight with his rivals. They would dissect his life, his crimes, and his ruthless ascent. But they would never learn the real story. The ghost had discovered a force greater than fear, territory, or power. He had found love, and that love had liberated him. 5 years later, I stood in our garden under the warm Greek sun, picking tomatoes. My hands were covered in dirt, and my hair was in a messy bun. I had never felt more content. "Mama!" a small voice shouted from the house. "Papa says it is time for lunch." I smiled and wiped my hands on my pants. Our 3-year-old daughter, who had her father's dark eyes and my stubborn chin, ran across the grass toward me, a blur of wild curls and pure joy. Dante stood in the doorway with an apron on. He looked nothing like the cold-hearted boss who had once commanded Chicago. He looked like a man who had discovered true serenity. "Are those for lunch?" he shouted. "The very best ones," I shouted back. Our daughter took my hand and pulled me to the house. "Daddy made the pasta with your grandmother's sauce." I met Dante's gaze over her head. The look he gave me was worth every frightening moment, every sleepless night, and every impossible decision. We had made this life together. It was a life away from violence and death. We were a family that rose from the ashes. Our love had overcome lies and war to become something real and permanent. We were not the ghost and the waitress anymore. We were simply us, and that was more than enough. If this story made your heart race, gave you chills, or made you believe in the kind of love that survives fire and war, then hit that like button right now. Drop a comment and tell me, would you have stayed with Dante, or would you have walked away? Share this story with someone who needs to feel something real today. And if you have not subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? We bring you powerful stories like this every single week. Subscribe and turn on the bell so you never miss the next one. This content was carefully researched, developed, and manually edited by our team to deliver meaningful lessons and inspiration to our audience.